The prophet said, "Don't think of my ascension as superior to that of Jonah. Mine was up to heaven, his was below into the belly of the fish. But nearness to God is beyond calculation. Nearness to God is neither up nor down. To be near God is to escape the prison of existence. What room has non-existence for up or down? Non-existence has no soon or far or late. The laboratory and treasure house of God is in non-existence. Since existence deludes you, how will you know what non-existence is? To be near God is to escape the prison of existence. What a beautiful line that is by one of the greatest poets and mystics of all time. Now, if you're a regular follower of this channel, you know that I love Rumi and that I feature his poetry quite a bit. But one aspect of his poetry that I haven't really touched on before is just how often it pulls from different stories, poems, and even scriptures. In fact, before Rumi became the magnificent poet that we all know him to be today, he was actually a learned scholar and teacher who was especially knowledgeable about Islamic teachings. Many of his poems draw from various sources, including not only the Quran, but also the sayings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, also known as the Hadith. Yet, while he often drew from these scriptures and traditions from time to time to express his profound insights, it's worth noting that Rumi's poetry transcends the boundaries of all religion and speaks to universal themes of love, spirituality, and awakening. This particular poem of his from the Masnawi is a perfect example of that. It starts with a quote by Prophet Muhammad, who references two stories in the Quran, before Rumi then goes on to distill the wisdom of the quote. Now, I just want to say it up front, I'm not sure if this is an actual quote by Muhammad, but it refers to his ascension to the heavens being similar to Jonah's descent into the belly of the fish when it comes to being near God. At first glance, this might not make much sense, but let's dig deeper and visit the original stories before trying to understand the comparison. The first story is that of Prophet Muhammad being carried by God on a night journey from the sacred mosque in Mecca to the Dome of the Rock or Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Now, the whole story itself is actually not mentioned in the Quran, but we learn that after arriving in Jerusalem, Muhammad was carried up to the heavens, greeted the other prophets, and eventually met and spoke with God. Now, this journey carries a lot of significance, not just to Muslims, but really everyone. because it shows that Muhammad was so deeply connected to God that he was able to enter his presence. Then you have the prophet Jonah, who was not raised to the heavens, but rather thrown into the belly of the fish. Now, you can be forgiven here for choosing the heavens over the fish, something that I probably would do as well. But here's the fun part. They are both the same, and here's why. According to the Quran, Jonah called on his people to worship the one true God. But unfortunately, they did not listen, and so he grew incredibly impatient and frustrated. As a result, Jonah boarded a ship to flee his people, but God punished him for his impatience and disobedience and caused a storm to arise at sea. The other sailors threw Jonah overboard in an attempt to calm the storm, and Jonah was later swallowed by a large fish, where he remained in its belly for a period of time. But Jonah repented to God while he was inside the fish's belly, and God eventually forgave him, causing the fish to spit him out safely onto the shore. Now you may question whether or not these stories are actually real, but there is a symbolic lesson here that Rumi wants us to understand by referencing Muhammad's quote at the beginning of the poem. Both Jonah and Muhammad had very different journeys on the surface, but in reality, they actually both ended up in the presence and grace of God. One ascended to the heavens, and the other plunged deep into the depths of the sea. But no matter where their body was physically, their soul was connected to God. And this is what Rumi means when he says, nearness to God is beyond calculation. It is neither up nor down in the traditional sense of those words. Nearness to God transcends all physical directions and measurements, and the physical ascension or descent of prophets is not the true measure of their closeness to God. Rather, you can almost think of it as a spiritual state that goes beyond all physical forms. In other words, we can never understand, from the outside looking in, the heights or depths a yearning soul travels when on their spiritual journey to God. But what we can understand is that there is nothing better in life than to be near God. To be near God, Rumi beautifully says, is to escape the prison of existence. And I'm sure we've all heard several Rumi poems and quotes that compare this life or body or even ego to a prison. But I've yet to hear someone compare all of existence to a prison. Now you may be thinking, does that mean that Rumi doesn't want us to exist? Does he want us to rather die than to live? Not in the way that you might think, but the short answer is yes. Rumi is not talking about our actual physical death, but rather our egoic death. The death of our ego, or false self, which puts up a veil separating us from the truth or reality. This egoic existence that we are living is nothing but a delusion, because the only true reality is God. God transcends delusion and duality, and so when we get closer to Him, we actually experience these same qualities. When we get closer to God, we escape the pain and suffering of existence. We experience nothing but peace, joy, and love. Because God is our only true home and reality. No matter how much we distract ourselves with this life and world, there is only one true path, and that is the path back to our Creator. Everything else is merely a derivative or a reflection of this ultimate goal. But keep in mind, not everyone can walk this path. We all have the ability to do so. That part is easy. But not all of us have the desire to do so. As Rumi says, this existence deludes us. It makes us forget the peace and bliss we had before we entered this body and world. Because before we entered this body and world, we were non-existent. We did not exist in this material form. In other words, we were formless. We still are formless. That is our true essence, our soul, which is always formless. But who will travel this life-changing journey to rediscover this truth? Who will ascend the heavens or plunge the seas to truly find God? You know, this is a deep question that arises in my mind after reading this poem, and I hope that by watching this video, you are inspired to ask yourself the same question. If you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to drop a like or subscribe to the channel for more poems, spiritual teachings, and guided meditations that can all help you get closer to God. But remember, you must transcend existence if you wish to truly enter the treasure house of God. You must go beyond all intellectual understanding to achieve the coveted prize of true spiritual realization and awakening. Otherwise, you will continue to be lost in this delusion of this world, thinking that your life is everything. But I imagine that if you are watching and learning from these videos, that you are one of those few rare souls, like Rumi for example, who is not afraid of making this journey back home. Who knows? Perhaps you are the next soul to ascend the heavens.